There we go. Maharaj Parikshit was, oh, big difference, was recognized from his birth as a chosen soul or specially gifted, protected soul. And even if one didn't know the details of who he was, at least it became known he was rescued by someone, somehow, from the Brahmastra of Ashwatthama. So it's a detail, but once released, the Brahmastra is invincible. Brahma Astra, or weapon, Astra, is invincible. Brahma Astra. And Ashwatthama knew how to release it, and he released it. And it was to kill the child in Uttara's womb, but it didn't kill him. The invincible was foiled. So it became clear. The one who saved him was the Supreme Lord, because only he can stop a Brahmastra. And he did. So the Lord recognized him as celebrated, and in a special way, worthy to be protected in this exceptional manner. And the world knew him that way also. An exceptional personality. And the rest of the Canto 1 section of Maharaj Parikshit's life, he was an exceptional personality. Everything he did was exceptional. A protector of Dharma, even when the age of Kali had begun. A protector of Dharma after the protector of Dharma, Krishna, had departed. So he was powerful. He was powerful. And the power of Maharaj Parikshit was derived from the personality of Godhead himself. He's recognized in this way. So for this reason, he was selected by circumstance to be the recipient of the message of transcendental Srimad Bhagavatam. Anyway, just spending some time describing Maharaj Parikshit's exalted position. Because we know from Bhagavad Gita, the qualification for asking and understanding what one asks is pranipat, or submission. Tadvidhi pranipatena. Following the pranipat comes prashna, or the questions. So he was already in the pranipat position, surrendered to and completely dependent upon the personality of Godhead. So he's asking about Brahma, and what Prabhupada is indicating here is, for sure, what was not uncertain was Brahma was dependent as Maharaj Parikshit was dependent, as was Arjuna dependent, as was anyone who's in this exalted position as these personalities. And supposing you're not exalted personality, we're also dependent. But their consciousness was recognizing that dependence fully. And this is one of the symptoms of surrender. We know from our teachings of Rupa Goswami and drawing from Padma Purana, 6 of the symptoms of surrender. Rakshikshati Vishvasa, recognizing that one will always be protected. And protected because one is always submissive. That's the pranipat part. By the submission, by the surrender, sharanagati, one has full confidence. By surrendering, I'll be protected. Some people, critics, people, think, oh, that's weakness. You shouldn't be submissive and dependent upon others. You should be strong. Don't be weak. It doesn't mean when you're understanding that you're being protected that you exhibit just being passive. Doesn't mean that. It's not display weakness in all circumstances. But dependent means even when there's some requirement for exhibition of strength, where does that strength come from? Let's say it in the material side or the negative side, an exhibition of strength is arising from false ego. Supposing somebody in fact is strong, where did that strength come from? Where does the endowment of anything come from? It comes from the source of everything. Such a person who exhibits strength, who is a materialist, doesn't acknowledge that that strength comes from the Supreme Lord. The person who is dependent upon the Supreme Lord recognizes that whatever strength is appropriate and required, it's supplied by the source of all strength and power. And that's the difference between theism and atheism, or atheism and theism. It's not, it's not being a pacifist. As we know, Prabhupada was, on the one hand, appreciating Gandhi's dedication to Bhagavad Gita and even encouraged him to travel throughout the world and teach Bhagavad Gita. On the other hand, he would speak in a non-appreciative way. Here's Bhagavad Gita, and he's trying to expound nonviolence when it's taking place on a battlefield. And in fact, Arjuna goes to battle based upon Krishna's instructions. And to screw out the meaning, nonviolence cooperative movement based on Bhagavad Gita's teaching, very creative. Yes, the teaching of nonviolence is found in Bhagavad Gita. The principle of ahimsa is one of the essential characteristics of a person's goodness. But if someone is going to be nonviolent in the Bhagavad Gita sense of nonviolent, they may act with great strength, as did Arjuna, or as did Maharaj Parikshit, when it's necessary, because when it's necessary, particularly for Kshatriya, is to protect. Kshatriya, protect, deliver from hurt. Kshatriya, the meaning, to deliver from hurt. Trayate, to deliver. Kshat, to hurt. So sometimes when aggressors are there, then one has to be very strong. But that non-violent position is what's violent, what's non-violent. It's not using strength, don't use strength. It's the purpose behind. And the acknowledgement of where that strength comes from, and thus the purpose of using it, and otherwise not. There's a nice description in the Bhagavatam preceding the Kurukshetra battle, where Maharaj Yudhisthira, with Krishna's blessing, conducted the Rajasuya Yagya, meaning he was crowned emperor, at least of his kingdom, which then was not Hastinapur, but the counterpart to Hastinapur. And Krishna came, the yagya was performed. Shishupal lost his life because he was vilifying Krishna. And one of the persons in attendance was Duryodhana. Duryodhana was really envious, over the top envious. The opulence of Yudhishthira, it surpassed the opulence. The opulence of Indraprastha surpassed the opulence of Hastinapur. And he didn't like that. I'm the king. And by the kindness of my father, when they came back after so long being away, he gave them a kingdom. Shouldn't have given them the kingdom. So Duryodhana, wanting to show his opulence, wearing his crown, carrying his sword, showing his opulence, his entourage of followers, when the gatekeepers and the guards, etc., were allowing him to come in, he just disregarded them and insulted them. Brash, deliberately, to show his strength and power and opulence. Of course, Krishna knew his mentality, and the rest of its description is in the Bhagavatam, it's in the Mahabharata as well. That the assembly hall, Sudharma assembly hall of Indraprastha, was created by Mayadanava. We'll just go over there for a bit. Mayadanava was saved. His life was saved by Arjuna because he was a Danava. He was not a good person. So when he came out of the Kandava forest, then Arjuna was ready to kill him, but he took shelter of Arjuna, Indra also. So he took shelter of Arjuna. Please protect me. So he's a king, Kshatriya. He gave him protection. Out of reciprocation, Mayadanava wanted to do something for Arjuna. And Arjuna said, Kshatriyas act out of duty, not compensation. Compensation means bribery, like that. You do something, I do something. So we don't do that. Krishna said, I'll accept. You should, using your mystic powers, create an assembly hall here in Indraprastha that surpasses anything in the world, even in the heavenly realm. Mayadanava, you can do it. So he said, yes, I'll do it. It'll take me some time to gather the ingredients. So Krishna went back to Dwarka. Mayadanava made the assembly hall. And after that assembly hall was built, this is when the Rajasuya Yajna took place. Krishna came back to preside or be present for the Rajasuya Yajna. So Krishna's back. Duryodhana is envious. The Rajasuya Yajna was performed. So he came to show his opulence and his power and in his brash behavior. And as he was approaching with his sword and crown and opulence and entourage, what looked like land was water and what looked like water was land. So when he was crossing land, it looked like it was water, so he lifted his cloth so it wouldn't get wet. But it was land. And then when he saw what looked like land, it was water. And he stepped on what he thought was land and he fell in the water. And everybody laughed. Yudhishthira tried to get people, don't laugh. It's not nice. He's an exalted person. And Krishna was with his eyes in nodding his head. He wanted them to laugh. And that's rude when somebody has a mishap. But there was a purpose. The purpose was to aggravate Duryodhana, so Duryodhana would then be involved in the battle of Kurukshetra, and Duryodhana and his whole company of rogues, of asuras, people that don't abide by Vedic culture, they would be finished. That's one of his purposes of coming. So he did like that, including the queens. He'd like laugh, go ahead. And he was that was the last straw. I've been humiliated, and now I'm going to take revenge. There must be war. Krishna wanted, so he behaved that way. So back to people that are qualified like Maharaj Parikshit, when they need to exhibit strength, they can. It's not humility is not weakness. The non-violence position appropriately applied is the nature of a Vaishnava. However, when strength is required, particularly for a Kshatriya to give protection, then they do, but it's not through false ego. So Maharaj Parikshit, just describing his qualified position, he knew when to do what, when. He knew to chastise the personality of Kali, but he also knew to not kill him, because what he was doing was deserving death penalty, but he didn't kill him. Why didn't he kill him? Because he understood this is the age of Kali, this is Krishna's arrangement, and so if I kill him, there won't be a Kali Yuga. I have to support, but at the same time curb the personality that's the personality of Kali. He was chastised strongly, but he didn't kill him. So now, specifically, this verse is describing his question and connected to the previous one. Is the form of Brahma qualitatively equal to the form of Vishnu from whom Brahma has come? He wants to hear this from Shukadeva. And if you think about it, let's think about it. If you think about it, it's a natural question. The natural question is, that which comes from the personality of Godhead, must it not be of the same quality as the personality of Godhead? Because he's Aja, he has no material mother, nor a material father, then wouldn't it be a logical conclusion that his body is as spiritual as the personality of Godhead from whom he came directly? So it would logically seem, and then similarly those that come from Brahma, since if he's fully spiritual, then those that come from Brahma, their bodies should be fully spiritual. That the logical extension might run like that. So then, how do you get material from spiritual? That's a good question, isn't it? How do you get material from spiritual? If he doesn't have a material mother, he's Aja, how does he have a material body? Because mothers supply bodies. So it's a natural question. Prabhupada doesn't address it yet. It'll be in the answers, but it's not easy to understand. How do you get material from spiritual? I mean, it's like a classic. The absolute truth is all spiritual. Therefore, that which comes from the all spiritual must be all spiritual. Let's go back a step. From the body of Brahma. What about the lotus flower? And what about the stem of the lotus flower? Is the lotus flower spiritual or material? Is the stem spiritual or material? Because the body of Garbhodaksha Vishnu is spiritual. So by logic, it would seem, so how do you get material from spiritual? Like, where's the line? Where's the, like, on this side is spiritual and that side is material? So certainly the Lord has multi-potencies. That's easy. He has multi-potencies. Parasya Shakti Vividaiva Shruyate. And those potencies are spiritual because they're his potencies. At the same time, it's a philosophical topic, but those potencies have their reflections. Like the example from chapter 15 of Bhagavad Gita, a tree, a pond, and the reflection in the pond. So the reflection comes from the tree. On the surface of the water, there's a reflection that looks like a tree. It's just upside down. So on the basis of the reflection concept or metaphor, then matter is simply a reflection, a qualitative reflection. The Sanskrit word is abhas, shadow. No, we have lots of experience of namabhas. Chanting, when it's not free from offense, is still chanting, is still the name, but it's namabhas. And then this world is a reflection or shadow, we can also say shadow or reflection of the spiritual world. So it's not false. It's just a reflection. It's not the real thing. So the body of Brahma is like that. And that's going to come up later. You know, how to understand the body of Brahma in comparison to the body of Vishnu, his father. That's clear. Vishnu is his father. And his mother, well, his mother's not material. We just, aja. So we can infer that the lotus flower and the stem is not material because he's aja. He was born from the lotus flower. It came from his abdomen. But his body is not spiritual. Now that's going to come later. How to understand that is in part of the answers. Next chapter. Answers by citing the Lord's version. But you can see in this Srimad Bhagavatam, in the course of telling a history, the philosophy, the philosophical basis is being exhibited or displayed or shown through a pastime. And to properly understand Vedanta Sutra, we need Srimad Bhagavatam because it's the commentary on Vedanta Sutra. How do things material come from that which is spiritual? And then if you're an impersonalist, you say, well, it just doesn't exist. Just hit the desist button. It just doesn't exist. It's false. That was clever. It's false. It doesn't exist. It appears to exist. Anyway, Brahman got covered by illusion. And take away illusion and it doesn't exist. It just doesn't exist. The reflection doesn't exist. We don't say it doesn't exist, we say it's temporary. So how does the temporary come from the eternal? How does from the all-spiritual come something that's not eternal? It's one of the answer, philosophically the answer is, Vyasadev's teaching within the Vedas has a nice fancy term, has some bells and whistles. Shakti Parinamavad. Vad means doctrine, Shakti means potency, and then that middle word is transformation. this transforms into that. That transforms into something else transformed into yet another thing. And it's all Krishna's energies, but by the process of transformation of energy, it acts this way or it acts that way according to the will of Krishna. Just like the difference between Yogamaya and Durga. Yogamaya was taken from the side of Yashoda, placed with Vasudeva and Devaki. Kamsa came and tried to kill Yogamaya. Of course, you can't kill Yogamaya. And she flew out of his hands and became Durga. That's the reflection. So does Durga exist or not? She exists. How does she exist? She exists as a reflection or transformation. The original source can transform. By Krishna's sanctioning, his energies transform. So the action of Durga is a transformation of Krishna's spiritual potency. The material potency is a transformation of Krishna's spiritual potency. It's a reflection of Krishna's spiritual potency. And how does it happen to be transformed? By Krishna's will. How does anything happen? In reality, how does anything happen? How does his spiritual potency do what his spiritual potency does? On the strength of Krishna's desire. And when he desires, his potencies do what he wants. He's Swarat. So this is the conclusion here. He is Swarat and others are not. Swarat. He's independent and others are dependent upon the independent. So Prabhupada's stating here in the purport, one thing is clear, this much is clear. Brahma is dependent, as all living beings are dependent. Now, leaving on the pause button is the body of Brahma identical in quality with the body of his father, Vishnu? So leave that because Prabhupada is saying it's not easy to understand. Shukadeva Goswami is going to explain it to the qualified person because of pranipat. And then his prashna is going to have an answer. He's going to understand it because he has pranipat. Bhagavatam is very wonderful literature. Even for materialists, I mean the historical part, the narration part, aside from the philosophical content, the pastimes described in the Bhagavatam are really amazing. They're mind capturing. And when hearing the pastimes, we're meant to get a picture of the absolute truth and how the absolute truth interacts with his potencies, spiritual, material, and marginal. The picture is there, and it's not easy to understand, as Prabhupada is saying. But the Bhagavatam has that power or potency to cleanse, and in that cleansed state to get some realization. And certainly our acharyas are the distributors of that light of the Bhagavad and the realizations of what that light of the Bhagavad is doing for us, revealing the personality of Godhead and his nature. Really wonderful literature. And the fruit is knowing Krishna. And the fruit of knowing Krishna is you go to Krishna. Not so many people are interested. I mean, considering the totality of population, not so many people are interested. Why? They have a different idea of what enjoyment is, and they're really stubborn and determined to make enjoyment happen. Although it's not real enjoyment, but they're stubborn and determined and like a donkey, just keep going for it. So it's rare. At the same time, the power of the Bhagavatam is for everybody. Janata agha viplava. Agha means sin. Janata means people who are sinful. Janata agha. And viplava means kaboom. It destroys the ignorance of the ignorant people just by its sound vibration. It's such nice literature. It's for Paramahamsas, it's for the Janata Agha folks, and everybody in between. Very wonderful literature. So one will experience the Bhagavatam differently from different positions, but it's all good for everybody. It's such nice literature. And the goal is go to Krishna. No more implication in material existence. Go to Krishna. Just stay with it. With the assistance of the Bhaktivedanta purports, taking the message and helping us to assimilate it nicely. Let's see if there's some discussion. 12 after the hour, if this clock is right. Yeah.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. The episode that you explained or mentioned about Duryodhana in the Indraprasth when he falls in the water, that reminds me of growing up. I heard that the reason behind Duryodhana's disrobing Draupadi was in the Hastinapura, I think when he was walking, Duryodhana was walking and he fell into the water and everybody laughed and he wanted to take the revenge. So Duryodhana wanted to take a revenge and that's why the disrobing. Was that the only reason?
That was, the chronology is backwards. The chronology is the event with Draupadi and the whole of the gambling situation was resolved by their being away for so many years. And when they came back, that's when they came back, that's when the Rajasuya Yajna occurred. No, I'm pretty sure that chronology that I just said is correct. Because, yeah. Does anybody in the room understand the chronology different than what I just said? So, that's not the reason. It's not the reason. It was, the reason largely is Karna. It was Karna's get back, and the friendship between Karna and Duryodhana resulted in the Draupadi situation. Correct? He was, prohibited from, participating in the competition because of his birth. So he was resentful to Draupadi. So that was resentful, came in that form. Anyone else?
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. I'm going to have a bit of difficulty formulating my question, but it revolves around the first maybe 5 minutes of your discussion with anger and acting on the platform of false ego. And specifically when dealing, I guess for my example, it's going to be with children who aren't actively practicing or seeking to practice Krishna consciousness. So I've been kind of thrown into a parenting position pretty quickly, and sometimes when teaching or trying to guide the children, some anger will arise, and that will be from the platform of false ego. And I'll try not to act or be angry from that platform, and then not act out of anger. But then sometimes when I try to use things that I've learned in bhakti to educate, it feels like those things aren't accepted. Yet when...
Aren't accepted by whom?
The children.
Yourself or
but
others?
In this case, it could be anyone on the materialistic platform.
But are you speaking of others are not accepting?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Maharaj. Yeah, when acting out of anger from the platform of false ego, that is accepted then.
Who accepts it?
Well, the children, for example.
Well, they don't have a choice. I'm not sure where this is going.
Well, if I do that,
if you do
then
that,
I'm also setting a bad example.
If you become angry when children are misbehaving, you're setting a bad example.
If I'm doing it from the platform of false ego.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
I guess I'm just
thinking
wondering if there's any input you might have that could maybe help me in that situation.
Well, the help in that situation is to go to the spiritual conception of yourself and others, and then you're not acting from false ego. That is to say, you may be very tolerant. And I've been listening to Prabhupada's recordings a lot, daily for years, and especially when it's in the early stages of, where he's speaking and the year he's speaking, etc., there's children noises all the time. And I find it difficult to, appreciate that Prabhupada is being subjected to that, and he doesn't make any comment. And so when I started processing, thinking it, well, he was a householder and he had children, so he knows that children make noise, and he just tolerated it. Just tolerated it. However, a little bit later, he would ask, just specifically, in the words he uses, could the children be made quiet? And he didn't become angry, but with probably 15 sannyasis went with their dandas to get rid of the kids or something. Because otherwise Prabhupada just tolerated it. Dogs barking and trucks passing by, and just, distracting noises. It's not like he couldn't hear it, he just tolerated it. So, when you're on a spiritual platform, in short, you know when to simply tolerate and when to say something, do something, other than just tolerate. The answer to my response to your question is, you're kind of stuck with the modes of nature until you come to the spiritual platform. And when you're situated on the spiritual platform, then you have freedom, because you're on the spiritual platform, where freedom means I can select, I can understand and then select what's the right response given the circumstance. And part of it is training. I've noticed, I won't mention the name, but there's one mother, and she doesn't need to be told. She brings her child, and as long as the child is peaceful, that she remains. And as soon as the child starts making some noise, she doesn't have to be told. She just gets up and leaves the room. Or, stands by the door to decide if the child is going to continue making noise or not. But, by training, that's on the parenting side, then let's say if the children are not your children, then to what degree do you tolerate? If the children are your children and they're making a disturbance that's disturbing others, then you do something about it, because that's what you do when for social respect. And then if it's not in a situation where there's others that may be disturbed, but it's just yourself and your children. If it's somebody else's children, you don't instruct them. If it's your children, then you have a responsibility to others, and if it's no others present, it's just you and the children, then it comes down to, get on the spiritual platform. Because yes, it's correct, you're not setting a good example. If you just, steam starts coming out your ears, or something else starts coming out your mouth, that's not kind-hearted. It's not coming, if it's coming from a false ego platform. Now, there may be situations with children that are your children, and it's just you're with them, and they're behaving X or Y or Z, then you select that which is appropriate, given their age, given their nature, given the accepted boundaries that you have drawn for yourselves as a family. And it's flexible, but you have some boundaries. A short, in conclusion, the best method of helping your own children is a relationship of love. And then when there's a relationship of love, then based upon that relationship of love, when there's some indication that this is not to be done, there's reciprocation. Of course, every child has their nature, etc. And every parent has their nature, etc. I'm thinking of specifically a situation where I was in somebody's home and using a projector, and with the projector there was this connector, different plug with a power strip. And a mother was sitting there with her small son, and the small son started reaching for the power strip. And the mother didn't just, let it happen, but she didn't say anything. I watched, because it was right over here. She just went like this. And the child went like this. I thought, wow. That's parenting. She showed the stick and waved it. And he withdrew and looked at his mother and smiled. So the best parenting is the relationship of love. And that's not easy to establish. It depends on the child. Some children, all you need to do is say no, and it means yes. They get more enthusiastic. So there's different natures. But the starting principle, even if discipline, Prabhupada's teaching is, even if there's discipline that's needed, let it be understood as coming from a place of love. Because if it's not understood as coming from a place of love, there'll be rebellion and damage. So that's parenting. If someone is not ready to do that, then they should reconsider, are they ready to become a parent? And the other concern of not setting a good example is really appropriate, because the duty of parenting is to deliver the dependence, not just from, putting their hands on a power strip or not making noise that's, disrupting everybody, but it's more than that. Not just good behavior, it's deliverance from birth and death. That's a big challenge, big requirement. Let's see if there's other points. Yeah.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. This question is from Canto 5.
From?
Canto 5.
Canto 5.
Discussion between Jada Bharat and King Rahugana.
Okay, you're reading the Bhagavatam. That's nice.
In a group reading.
Okay, good. However.
So the question came when Jada Bharat, when he starts speaking to King Rahugana, he says that you may think I am dumb, but I'm a self-realized person. And in the very next purport text, Prabhupada says that a person who is Lord's pure devotee or Brahmhamsa never claims to be a liberated person. So we were just confused.
Sounds contradictory. 180-degree contradictory.
Yeah, so we were just confused, if you can.
Well, there's a rule and there's exceptions. Jada Bharat, during his whole life, he said nothing to anybody about anything. And for some reason, he chose to speak to Maharaj Rahugana. Now, what was it about Maharaj Rahugana that prompted Jada Bharat to speak to Maharaj Rahugana when he said nothing to anybody about anything? He saw something. He doesn't say that in the verses or purports. He saw something. And for someone that in whom you see something, and point 2, he was covered with pride. He Jada Bharat, decided to not follow the rule, but the exception, which is he wanted him to look up instead of looking down, because the proud persons look down. So he wanted to give him something, but he had to look up to receive it. Now, the rule is you don't advertise. He did 2 exceptions. He spoke when he never spoke, and he advertised instead of not advertising. He wanted to achieve something with a qualified person, and sure enough, he picked the qualified person to speak to. Okay.
This is by Radha Kunja Bihari Prabhu. From the Srimad Bhagavatam, we learn that Krishna is the primary creator and instructs Brahma as the secondary creator, Mahavishnu as maintainer, and Lord Shiva as the destructor. But I am seeing some messages that Durga Devi was instructed by Lord Sri Krishna to create, maintain and destroy the material universe. So he has 2-part question, Maharaj. Is this correct? Second one is, how
Yes, it's correct. It's right in the Brahma Samhita. It's correct.
So second is, how do we defend the version of Srimad Bhagavatam?
How do we do what?
How do we defend this version of Srimad Bhagavatam? Srimad Bhagavatam says Brahma is the creator and Vishnu.
So there's agencies. Through what potencies does Brahma do, or what potencies does Vishnu do? And so it's not, if it says this, it can't be that. If it's that, it can't be this. They're both right. So how do you align they're both right when there says this and that? There's an agency through which great personalities work. So what I think the question is, the verse Shrishti, Striti, Pralaya, Sadhana, Shakti, Rekha, it's a Brahma Samhita verse. So that's puzzling, because Brahma is the creator. Now it says that Durga is the creator. So through what agency that a personality that's doing something is dependent upon the potencies of the Supreme Lord. And the destroyer, Lord Shiva. But she's the destroyer. But Shiva's destroyer. So now there's a tussle between who's the destroyers. It's through the agency of potencies. Next.
This is from Amara Mataji. I heard a person appreciating some books that he follows because they mention all the reasons for do's and don'ts in detail. For example, why not to cut nails on a particular day? So they feel that this book is perfect book because this gives all such reasonings. I seek to understand how to understand and explain what is the place of such literature.
What is the place of this literature, the details literature?
Yes. That explain compared to Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam that speak about the superlative of all paths, that is devotional service. Also, how important it is for a person to go through such a journey of nitty-gritties before they can get to the transcendental service to Krishna.
Well, the second part is, it's not so, I mean, those details and details and details, like the detail that was mentioned, is for persons that like details and not the essence. But one who has captured the essence, the details are details. The details may be there, may not be there, but if the essence is there, then that's sufficient. Like when Prabhupada introduced bhakti to the world, he didn't give details and details because people would stand off. Too many details, forget it, man. So he gave the essence, and the essence is that which will cleanse the heart. And the purpose of the cleansing of the heart is to know Krishna. And he spoke on these points over and over, because by speaking on those points over and over, they went in. They were cleansing sufficiently that they went in. Then supposing somebody, take it the other way, supposing somebody has that essence and they don't know this detail, that detail. Is it shame on them? They're not going to get the fruit of the Vedic wisdom because they didn't know so many details. Rather, they'll get the fruit whether they know those details or don't know those details. One who knows, they follow. But just supposing you don't know, then you go with the essence. That was the second question. What was the first question?
So how do we convince that person that the Srimad Bhagavatam is transcendental to such literatures?
Well, there's many ways. Here's one. A real simple one. The Atmarama verse of the Canto 1, Chapter 7. Atmarama verse says that those like Shukadeva Goswami who have no interest at all in things material was very interested in Srimad Bhagavatam, which means it wasn't material, because he has no interest in anything material. Atmaramascha munayo nir grantha api orukrame. Celebrated verse. Read the Atmarama verse and you have the answer to your question. Next. That's it. Okay. You have something. Oh.
Regarding the transformation of energies from spiritual to material.
It's not just material to spiritual or spiritual to material. It's all the variegatedness of everything. All the variegatedness of the spiritual and the variegatedness of the material. Go ahead.
So the source is the Supreme Lord for both. Yeah, I'm not able to form the question, Maharaj. I mean, because it looks like it is actually, I mean, one place we hear it is, Krishna says Apara Shakti and Para Shakti, right? And then...
well, he can convert one to the other and vice versa. That's at his discretion.
Okay, I think that makes it clear. So that is the reason, when a pure devotee sees even a material energy, he sees in relation to the Supreme Lord.
Yeah.
Can I ask second question?
Sure. And I'm going to end after that.
Yes. Regarding the Duryodhana's episode, because even Krishna was trying to aggravate that situation to him because of some other purpose, right? When we see or when we get into that position of Duryodhana's kind of case, when somebody try to aggravate us, maybe we may see the Krishna's hand to some extent.
Well, wait a minute. Now, don't Krishna's aggravating and somebody else aggravating are two different things.
Yes, Maharaj. When somebody else is aggravating.
And Krishna could have arranged in a n number of different ways. And he could have just blown him up. He didn't need to, but he wanted. He has a leela, and he wanted to do it the way he wanted to do it. And it's not the same for just somebody who's aggravating us, or laughing at us, or ridiculing, or whatever. It's not with a transcendental purpose. From on the receiving end, it's not the same.
So on my part, there is some lesson to learn from that incident, but maybe we may see, the lesson as Krishna's hand in that, right? I need to learn something there, but instead of doing that and acting like what, trying to blame the person or trying to take the revenge or whatever Duryodhana did, right? So I was just trying to compare that, Maharaj.
Well, you're not Duryodhana, and the aggravating person is not Krishna. So there's dharma for you to be fulfilled when something like that happens, and you just follow your dharma and the teachings of our acharyas when there's what you're supposed to do, and you do that. Then you have to have spiritual strength to do what you're supposed to do. You have to have purity to get that spiritual strength to do what you're supposed to do. So you work on your purity so that you have the strength to do what you're supposed to do, what's appropriate. Each situation is a little different. Yena mamupiyanti te, so that you can go to Krishna. Stay always tesham satata yuktanam, vajatam priti purvakam. And then you'll get the intelligence, what to do in different circumstances. So you go to the first part and you get the second part. If you don't have the first part, you're on your own. That's not nice. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.